Yakima Canutt, in my opinion, was the father of all stuntmen. I did get a chance to meet the great man once. I worked with him on a film called 11 Harrow House Street in London. Yak came over as a technical advisor. But of course, as a young stuntman growing up, I'd heard his name forever. He was the first stuntman, or the only stuntman ever to get an Oscar. But he was not only a great performer, he was also a great rigger, a great planner, a great dissector of stunts. And he was one of the first that I'm aware of that could dissect a stunt and work out a way of doing it, because obviously a stunt is a stunt, it's not a real thing. And in movies, we see a man jump off a cliff and land presumably on the ground, but it's not done for real. So Yak was one of the first that could actually break it all down, use rigging, invent rigging if he had to, so the stunt could be performed over and over again. He was groundbreaking in that respect, but at the same time, he was also a fantastic performer as a stuntman. His legendary doubling John Wayne, Stagecoach. He was the one that made all the stunts coherent with the rest of the movie. To become a good stuntman or stunt coordinator, I think you have to have a natural ability. Everybody drifts into this business from some other form. You don't come to school and say, please, miss, I want to be a stuntman. Could I do the stuntman course when I'm graduating? There is no stuntman's course. There are schools, but a stuntman has to have an inbuilt ability, and I always feel that he has to have one speciality, which is what brings him over and above other stuntmen. For instance, when I'm picking stunt people, I'll pick somebody, if he's a high diver, I'll get the very best high diver I can. If he's not a stuntman, I'll get somebody that does high diving for a living and can perform the feats that I want, or a rider or a car driver. So you have to have that one speciality. Yakima Canutt had many specialities. He knew camera because he'd been an actor, he'd been a silent screen actor, and I believe his voice just didn't carry over when the talkies came in, but he understood film. He was an action man. He was a world champion rodeo rider, so he knew action. He knew body movement, he knew survival. Based on his background as a cowboy, he then drifted into Western films and into the action side of Western films. And he was one of the smart ones that thought, wow, I won't just fall off that horse on my head. I will put a wire on my back to the saddle and do a somersault when I come off the horse. A, it'll look more spectacular. B, it'll keep my head from hitting the ground. It'll make me take one more rotation. The thing that Yakima Canutt is remembered for is his rigging ability and bringing that rigging knowledge or that rigging need to the film business. He did invent a thing called the running W, which is a thing that is frowned upon nowadays. In those days, it was revolutionary and it was a way to trip horses. It's barbaric. It was not one of the best things in the world to have invented. But a guaranteed way of making a horse fall without the rider looking as though he's making the move.
Just sit quiet, folks.
He rigged the stagecoach going across the river. You put a cable across the river and you tie the stagecoach to it. It can't get washed away down the river, and you have something to help it across, assist it across against the current and things like that, pulling it. I think the main reason the work of people like Yakima Canutt is so fabulous and interesting to me is, A, it was real, B, they didn't have any of the help that we have these days, and C, they were groundbreaking. Anybody can follow, but to come up with those ideas, to invent them, is fantastic. I think the most memorable thing about Yakima's action and stunts in Stagecoach, and bearing in mind there were many other stunts in it, but the one stunt that everybody remembers is the jump onto the horses, the team, the slide under the stagecoach. The way it was shot, it was incredibly well shot. When you look at it now and you realize that the equipment they were dealing with, they'd have an old truck chassis, flatbed on it, out in the desert. And if you look at it today, it's as smooth as a gyroscope. It's absolutely incredibly shot. You see a man doing it for real. On Indiana Jones, without question, the moment where Harrison goes underneath the truck and hangs on with his whip and comes up the back, I think that was a 100% pure homage to Stagecoach, and I'm sure it would have been suggested by Terry Leonard. Terry Leonard is a great cowboy, great friend of mine, and he was the double for Harrison before I got to Tunisia. I was involved coordinating the fight around the revolving aeroplane. Terry was telling me about this stunt he was going to do, and at the same time we would be running at nights because Terry had this damage to his leg, which was caused by the Lone Ranger stunt that he tried to do, which was a replica of Stagecoach, jumping onto the horses, going underneath the Stagecoach and climbing up the back. But unfortunately, he got a little bit offline and the Stagecoach ran over his legs and he nearly lost a leg. It was a tremendously bad accident. So the tough guy that is, old Terry, he got back fit again and he was back on Raiders, or got onto Raiders, and he was running with me every night and getting him fit. And he was telling me about this stunt, but he was such a cowboy, such a fan of Yakima Canuts. I know that stunt was put in there, and I'm sure it had been recommended by Terry as an homage to the stunt he tried and failed to do on The Legend of the Lone Ranger, as a copy of the one for Yakima, which makes Yakima's achievement all the more fantastic to do it way out in the desert, just in those days with minimal knowledge of what to do, but Yakima was bright enough or smart enough or clever enough to put spaces between the horses so there was enough room when he went down, they didn't trample on him, all the little rigs he had in there, but he still had to go between the wheels on the axle of the Stagecoach, which is what tripped Terry and ran over him, which makes it more of a fantastic achievement that nobody has ever, in my knowledge, done it successfully at speed like that. When I was a stuntman growing up, I would do a stunt and go, wow, that was really dangerous. I can't wait to see that on dailies. And you go and look and go, well, that was wimpy. And then you do something else that was absolutely a piece of cake. It didn't feel anything at all and didn't feel that spectacular. You go and look at it on dailies, go, whoa, that looked fantastic. What was the difference? And you started analyzing what the difference was. It was the camera speed, the camera move. And you pretty soon learn that it's all about what goes in the lens. It's, reality is probably very boring, but the way we shoot things is very important. And Yakima Canutt was one of the first people that could dissect a sequence, even a simple thing like a fight. He could break down how to shoot a fight, what cuts you'd need, what coverage you'd need, where you could do it with the doubles, and then you'd need this shot and that shot with an actor. A lot of directors don't know that. Stuntmen do, because that's all we do. We do know plot lines and how to build a crescendo, which is what stunts are all about. You don't want to blow everything up in the first 5 minutes. You have to time it all out. It's a very important asset, and you only get that from experience. And Yakima Canutt, again, was one of the people that had the experience who could then say what he wanted. Yakima Canutt had an awful lot of influence on stunts I've done over the years. I did a Western in Israel, the first kosher Western, with Gregory Peck, and we had a wagon. I had to have the horses shot away from under it, and Indians attacking. And in the back of my mind all the time was, I wonder how Yakima Canutt would have done this. How would they have handled it? Because in those days when we went to Israel, it was a little bit of a frontier, and I felt I was almost reliving a John Wayne, John Ford movie, doing that movie. So yeah, he was very prevalent in the back of my mind. When I was designing the stunts, I had to slide down a cliff and fall, so I had cables to restrain me before I got to the bottom over the steep edge of the cliff, all sorts of things like that, that Yakima Canutt would have hopefully come up with the same idea, or he'd have probably done it better.